Hey, race fans, Alex Weaver here. You guys just saw episode 5 of the What If series on FS1, which is What If Dale Earnhardt never returned to RCR?
But what if Dale Earnhardt ever returned to Richard Childress Racing?
I am now going to be joined by Bob Pockrass from Fox Sports and Jonathan Merriman. Guys, this is going to be a really fun one to debate, not just because there's a ton of number 3s behind Merriman's head over there on the wall, but also because this is just something that fans love to talk about. We know that Dale Earnhardt is synonymous with this sport. You can't even do anything about NASCAR without holding up that 3. So, Bob, let's start with you. If Dale Earnhardt would have never returned to RCR, how many championships would Dale have, and how many championships would RCR have?
I think Dale would have had at least 4. Look, he won one before he got to RCR. I think he would have won more. I think RCR would have had at least 1 or 2. They had Ricky Rudd, right? And when you look at one of the years when Dale won one of his titles, who was second to Dale? It was Ricky Rudd driving a Hendrick car. So I think Ricky Rudd could have certainly had at least some success at RCR if they hadn't made that change.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Dale certainly would have won championships. Now, did Dale make Richard that much better, or did Richard make Dale that much better? I think that comes into question there. I definitely think the potential would have been there for RCR to win championships, and I think they could have certainly won at least 1 or 2 with a guy like Ricky Rudd behind the wheel. And look, just because I got all this 3 stuff behind me doesn't mean I'm not a big fan of the Rooster. Ricky Rudd was an absolute legend. He didn't take anything from anybody. Personality-wise, him and Dale were similar. If you roughed him up on the track, he was going to rough you back up on the track. So it is weird to think that, what if all the 3 gear, what if that was Ricky Rudd instead of Big E back there behind that Coke bottle?
Man, how the man cave would have looked different. I'm sure in multiple man caves around the country. Okay, so you guys teed me up for Ricky Rudd. If he stayed, how successful is he? And is he just as successful as Dale Earnhardt was at RCR?
That's a great question, Alex. I don't think that you can minimize just the relationship that Childress and Earnhardt had. And it's just one of those things that you're like, it probably couldn't have been matched. But I still think that Ricky would have been successful. I think Ricky probably still would have gone off and tried to start his own team at some point, because I think that's kind of who Ricky Rudd is. But I certainly think he would have won races, and I think he would have gotten his fair share of trophies, and at least one of those big trophies on the mantle at RCR.
I think Ricky Rudd could easily be a 2-time champion if he sticks with RCR and that relationship were to carry out. But I think you have to look long term. At the time, Piedmont was on the car at RCR, and Dale hadn't brought Wrangler over, and GM Goodwrench wasn't in play. So, a lot is to be said of who can you attract to your race car to bring in a little bit of money to get a little bit more of that speed out. Maybe Dale was the factor in that. So Ricky Rudd definitely, I think, would have been a champion. He would have been a champion if not for Dale Earnhardt, as Bob noted earlier. But it's cool to think about, maybe DEI would have been, Ricky Rudd would have had that in that relationship with RCR and ECR and the engines and all of that stuff, and what that would look like today. And so it's cool to go down that road, especially thinking about, what type of a guy and race car driver Ricky Rudd is, as opposed to Dale Earnhardt's legacy. But I mean, both of those guys are legends in their own right. And definitely, I think Ricky would have made a bigger impact and already be in the Hall of Fame.
We know the legacy that Richard Childress Racing has had now in 2020 and what that organization looks like. And the number of times that I've held up this number throughout my life has been a lot. So without Dale Earnhardt, what does RCR look like today? And the iconic 3, could that have been different if Dale Earnhardt wouldn't have returned to Richard Childress?
I think it for sure would have been different, right? Because then does GM Goodwrench come and all the marketing push behind it? Does Dale, without Dale, is there a Richard Childress Racing museum? And is it as big a museum as it is now, right? I think all those things it's crazy to think about, but just the legacy that Dale Earnhardt brought to, or the legacy that Dale Earnhardt has, with Richard Childress, just when you look at just the marketing and the financial impact, I think RCR would still be around, but it might not be as big. And I don't know if Richard has a winery yet.
I think, well, you mentioned the number 3, Alex, and, it's important to remember that, that number was Richard's before it was Dale's. That's the number that Richard ran. So I think in terms of to Richard Childress himself, would the 3 still be the 3? Absolutely. To me and you and race fans all around the world, would we identify as much as we do with that 3 that is, perfectly behind my head? Probably not.
And on the other shoulder?
Yeah, and on the other shoulder. Yeah, 3's everywhere. So I definitely think, Richard Childress Racing would still probably be running the 3 if they were still in business. But would it be as significant? Probably not, because Dale Earnhardt is a once-in-a-lifetime talent. That's a once-in-a-lifetime relationship. And, lightning rarely strikes twice, and I doubt either one of those, 2 entities, Dale or Richard, would be what they became if they were not together. That's a lot of words.
Well, regardless of what if and if he returned or not, we are sure glad how history turned out, because we get to respect the Intimidator and that iconic number 3 for the rest of history. Bob, we appreciate you being here. We missed you last week. We're glad to have you back for episode 5.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
All right, Jonathan and I are now going to welcome in Eric and Danny. Guys, we talked about it with Bob already, but if Dale Earnhardt wouldn't have returned to RCR, how would things have been different? But I want to ask you guys, those big wins, and it's synonymous with Earnhardt country, is Daytona and Talladega, and how good he was there. But would he have won Daytona at all? And would it have come even earlier? Because we know everything went wrong for the 3 car when it came to winning at Daytona.
Yeah, it certainly would be possible. I think, like you said, he was so good at the other super speedway tracks in that black number 3 car for Richard Childress, but for some reason, the Daytona 500 just always seemed to escape him in every imaginable way. So it's easy to say if maybe he wasn't in the 3, in the outside line right there, and instead he was in a different car on the inside line, that might have been all it took for him to get a win earlier. For as good a driver at the super speedways and as strong as he performed on Talladega and Daytona for so many years, I tend to think, he would have won it sooner, because it took him out as long as it possibly could take him to win at Daytona in the 3. But then we wouldn't have that special moment that we all refer back to.
He would have for sure won a Daytona 500. Super speedway racing was just in Dale Earnhardt's blood. Now, would it have come like in 20 years later in 1998? Probably not. I would say it would have come sooner. How soon, though? Who knows? He had so many issues during his run of trying to win it. He ran into a seagull, blew a motor on the last lap. So many crashes happen, and all that come driving a 3 car. If he's in another car, maybe luck would have been different. Who knows if he runs into, I don't know, a coach Joe Gibbs as he's coming into the sport and decides to go drive for him one day, things could have been different.
I think, too, that the kind of allure of that race and it being out of reach for Dale for 20 years, even though he was so close, made that moment over the top. If he comes out and he ends up being a 3-time, 4-time Daytona 500 Series champion, I don't think that the 1 would mean as much to Earnhardt fans. I think it feeds into the legend of the Intimidator of, he's a 7-time champion. The guy had won every single thing there was to win except for like kryptonite race, right? Daytona 500, he just couldn't get it done. And then when he does, you got Mike Joy, who's getting kind of quivery in the booth, and everybody lines up on pit road. Like, that was just meant to be. And if it happened any other way, it's just not how it was supposed to happen. So, could Dale have won multiple Daytona 500s if he was with somebody else? Yes, but he certainly had the chance to win multiple with Richard Childress Racing, and it just didn't happen until 1998. So when we dive into the what-if scenario, I wouldn't change a thing about that 20 years leading up to 1998 and that 1998 moment, because it just I got cold chills talking about it. It's such an awesome, iconic moment in our sport. So, who knows? Dale was so good at plate racing, and Richard was really good at plate racing. So I don't know. If you're not going to win multiple with that duo, I don't know if it happens.
And
Yeah,
that 1998 race was big for Dale Earnhardt, but I think that's also done a lot for like the mystique of the Daytona 500, because you saw how important that race was for Dale Earnhardt. Think about how many times that replay has been used to hype up the first race of the season, and I think that moment, you're right, is kind of irreplaceable.
And likewise, the fact that it took 20 years for him to win that meant so much more when 20 years later, Austin Dillon, grandson of Richard Childress, won the Daytona 500 driving the 3-car.
Somebody should write a book. It's great. I love Daytona.
yeah, the legend of David slaying Goliath. It doesn't really have the same effect if he does it on the first try. So definitely added to that iconic number 3's history. Okay, so if Dale would have stayed at Bud Moore, let's say for a little bit longer, and not gone back to RCR, where would Dale have finished his career, and how would his path change differently if he hadn't have gone back to RCR?
I don't think he would have finished out with Bud Moore. As everyone knows, Bud Moore's level of competitiveness did go down over the years. So knowing Dale Earnhardt being the driver to his caliber he was, the whole reason that Richard Childress told him to go in the first place was because the team wasn't ready for a driver of his caliber. Well, he'd need to go find some kind of competitive ride. So I don't think he would have stayed at Bud Moore, whether that's a 5-year run, a 10-year run with him. Who knows how long that would go. But if I'm guessing, him being really as competitive as he was in the 80s, someone who's coming into the sport around that time would have been maybe a Rick Hendrick. Maybe Dale Earnhardt would have ended up with Hendrick Motorsports in the early days.
Another strong team that sort of started to arrive kind of near the end of Dale Earnhardt's career was Joe Gibbs Racing. Could we have seen Dale Earnhardt go to JGR and finish his career up there? They won championships with Tony Stewart and Bobby Labonte in what would have been around near the end of Dale Earnhardt's career. So they would have been competitive, and maybe we could be talking about, I don't know, if Tony Stewart doesn't go to the 20, what about an orange number 20 Intimidator? That would be wouldn't quite have the same ring to it, I'm sure.
The thing that pops up in my head is, if you compare him to Ricky's career, Ricky Rudd's career, who he replaced at RCR when he went back, he was a bit of a journeyman. So, what if Dale goes over here to Rick Hendricks for a little bit, and then maybe he finds his way over to Penske for a little bit, and then Joe Gibbs Racing for a little bit? What if he's one of these guys that hop around from team to team? And, obviously he's super talented, and he could almost probably name his price and go wherever he wanted to go and chase a paycheck and chase the best equipment. So maybe Dale has more wins if he does that. Maybe he doesn't stick with one organization long term. So that's interesting to think about of Dale in multiple car numbers and multiple manufacturers. I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of hardcore Intimidator fans are going to have to want to put out of their mind is, Earnhardt and something other than a Chevy.
It sounds weird to think about the fact that Dale Earnhardt could have been a journeyman, but the fact of the matter is he kind of already was. Throughout the majority of his career before he really established himself in a 3-car, he was, willing to go take whatever deal he could. Ultimately, he got with the folks at Osterlund Racing. That didn't work out. He wasn't happy with the team of J.D. Stacy and went to Richard Childress, and he told him to go where he needed to, went to Bud Moore, and then finally got established somewhere. So that's not a crazy thing to consider, that he would have done what he needed to be as competitive as he could. But it's just a big what if of who would he be with?
So let's say that Senior doesn't return to Richard Childress Racing and Ricky Rudd goes on in whatever car number with whatever organization. Is he a first ballot Hall of Famer for you guys?
I think he very well could be, because he's already kind of close as it is. He's kind of missing, that big championship run. I think he has 23 wins. So a very solid, very talented driver for sure. And if I recall, I think his first wins in the Cup Series came when he came over to Richard Childress Racing. So there might have been something there. There might have been a stronger relationship there than maybe we really got to see a whole lot of. So as strong as he was, as kind of gritty of a driver as he was, I tend to believe he would have been more successful perhaps than he was, kind of bouncing between teams towards the end of his career and everything. But it's tough to say, because he's already fairly close to being Hall of Fame worthy, maybe not first ballot, but Hall of Fame worthy. So I feel like just a few more wins, maybe a championship, puts him over the edge in that department.
I would say that if Ricky Rudd had got with Richard Childress Racing, he could have probably had the talent, and the team would have had the cars to give him what it takes to get a few championships during this run. Would he have had 7? Maybe not, but maybe he could have got 2 or 3 of the team. And I think that would definitely give Ricky Rudd what it takes to be in a NASCAR Hall of Fame on a first ballot basis.
Well, I'm sure we could go on for this about this for hours, but I want to thank you guys for joining us. Merriman, it's a good thing you don't have to find more wall decorations, because that black number 3 looks good up there.
Yeah, it looks a lot better than white paint.
All right, Eric, Danny, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.